Well, welcome to our Get Into stage here at Talent for Tech. Lovely to see so many of you here first thing this morning. This stage today is going to be exploring different tech career pathways and opportunities. So we've got a fantastic programme throughout the day, and we're starting with our first panel discussion this morning, which is Game On, exploring gaming power beyond play. So really exciting for those of you that are into gaming and want to maybe do a little bit more for it, because gaming isn't just for games. It's a driving force behind innovation, problem solving, and it does have a real world impact. So we're going to discuss some of that today with our panel, and chairing the panel is Jessica Leigh Jones, MBE. Now, Jessica is CEO of iungo Solutions, and she's an expert in transforming corporate and educational concepts into immersive learning experiences. So Jessica's going to tell you a little bit about the sector, a little bit about what we're going to be discussing, and then she's going to be introducing our fantastic panel. So please put your hands together for Jessica and our panel.
Great, good to see you all. Can I just check you can hear me okay? Fantastic. Okay, so let's get started. The digital creative sector is one of the top priority growth sectors identified by the Cardiff Capital Region. And Wales as a country is home to a really unique and collaborative cluster of indie developers. So there are lots of opportunities, I suppose, for entrepreneurship and for new businesses and for self-employment and freelance within the sector. But more recently, we've also had a real vote of confidence from some foreign investors. So, for example, American Rocket Science has recently set up a European headquarters in Wales. So I think it's fair to say the future of gaming in Wales is bright. You're going to hear from some really interesting panel members who've all got different journeys into this sector, some of which are operating in games development and in the entertainment industry, and some of which are operating actually on the outskirts of that and looking at how some of these technologies are transforming other industries. So we've got a lot to cover in a short space of time. But I think the other thing to point out for particularly younger people looking at this sector as an interesting pathway to consider is that the sector is very, very diverse. Now, I appreciate that may not be completely reflected by the panel that we have today, but for example, 50% of gamers are female, and more than 50% of developers, games developers, identify as LGBTQ+. So it is a very diverse space, and it is a sector where you can bring your whole self to work. It is a sector where you can be obviously very creative and very collaborative. So let's get into this in a little bit more detail. So let me just introduce my panel members. We've got Dibana, firstly, CEO and co-founder at Wales Interactive, probably Wales's largest games company.
Well, yeah. So we've released, I think, 36 titles in 11 years. So we've sold 6 million games, over 100 million streams. So we release games on all the latest gaming platforms. And we also specialise in interactive movies as well. We were in this building about 3 or 4 days ago for the BAFTA Cymru Awards, where our interactive film was nominated in the feature film category, which is the first time that's ever happened for an interactive movie / game title.
So this is a true homegrown export, very exciting. So Di, I think it'd be really good if you could tell us a little bit about your journey and how you really came to set up a games development business in Wales.
Yeah, well, I'm from the Rhondda Valley. You can see I haven't lost my accent. So essentially, I've been in the games industry for 28 years now. So my core skill was I was an artist living in Treorchy in the Rhondda Valley, and I went to art college. And then obviously I played video games sort of in my spare time. And then computers, when I started with green screen, that's how old I am. So when they became colour and there were programs on there for me to be an artist digitally, I thought I could combine, I suppose, my skill, which was drawing, with my hobby, which was making video games. So essentially, I wrote off to the back of the boxes. There was no internet at the time. All the games companies that were in the UK, and somebody wrote back, essentially, and I started to have my first interviews to become a games designer / artist in the games industry. So since 1995, I've worked on every gaming platform that's existed. So I predate PlayStation, but every game's on PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, and now 5, and all the games platforms that existed. So I'm used to being teamed up with the programmer, because I'm an artist and designer by trade, and then somebody from a technology background, a science background. And we're in a room and we come up with an idea, and we make that idea and we take it all the way to market. So if you fast forward, then the games company which I co-founded with my business partner, Richard Pring, who's not here today, unfortunately. He's a programmer by trade, I'm an artist by trade. So we set up our own company to make and publish our own games from inside Wales, and that's what we've been doing for 11 years. It's the same sort of thing. We've built a young team around ourselves, which are made up of programmers, artists, designers, musicians, salespeople, accountants, whatever jobs that are needed in any other business, that's what's needed. We've done it the hard way. We are not work for hire. We come up with ideas, we make them, we self-publish them everywhere in the world ourselves, and then the majority of money comes back into our bank accounts, and then we go again. That's what we've been doing on loop for 11 years. So, like I said, we've gone from 1 game to 26 console titles. We've been nominated for over 150 awards. We've won BAFTAs, and I'm one of the first people. I'm the first person in Wales to ever be recognised with an MBE for video games development, but one of a small group in the UK as well. So, like I said, I could talk for ages, but let's give the other panelists some time. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell, really. So I'm a big advocate for, if somebody won't hire you, hire yourself, essentially.
And I can vouch for Di's story, because I remember when I worked in Sony and Di and Rich were upstairs in the incubation centre in the very early days, and I used to send my apprentices up to do games testing for you. So that was really fun. So it's really good to see you. Thank you for sharing that. So just Richard, I just want to come to you now. This is Richard Hebblewhite, who is a senior lecturer at Wrexham Glyndŵr University, but also the founder of Games Talent Wales. So just tell us a little bit about your initiative and how it's really preparing talent for this sector. Maybe also just tell us a little bit about how this sector is a little bit different to other sectors, and what the key sort of skills and qualities that young people thinking about a career in games development would need.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I'm the director of Games Talent Wales. I'm also the head of computing at Wrexham University, and I'm also on the executive board for the Global Game Jam organisation. So I manage all of the global regional activity for Global Game Jam. And that's an important dynamic to this, because it's really about diversity, accessibility, and giving people opportunities to participate and kickstart their journey in the industry. So my inspiration for the Games Talent Wales program was born of the fact that I kind of got fed up of releasing lots of talented people into the big wide world, and realizing that, there's got to be something we can do to increase the number of opportunities to give these guys a head start, because some of them had formed very cohesive and talented teams. They were working on products that had genuine legs, and we felt, if we could give these guys some funding, some mentoring, and introduce them to the right people, then they've got a really good chance of actually continuing that journey and doing what Di eloquently said, which is employ yourself. And that's really what it's about. It is about career kickstarting. So the Games Heart Wales program, what we do is we specialize in helping people to form what are micro game studios, real games companies that are registered, real entities. We provide them with seed funding, a whole series of mentoring. We give them access to some of the biggest game shows in the world in terms of going there and crewing it and launching their games. And this year we've actually expanded the program to include non-student startups. So we now actually help and work with anyone who has a game studio in Wales who can apply to us, and we can work with them to help get their project over the line and continue that journey. So in that sense, what we're looking to do is really harness people's talent in whatever your skill set is. So that includes if you're a designer or a programmer, but also people who have that more of an entrepreneurial spirit, who see themselves as a future industry leader, and they're giving them that opportunity to try things out and experiment whilst in some part while they're still students. So a really great example is this year we've just funded a studio that was started by a bunch of first year students. So they're already living the dream. They're about to kind of launch a first title. So 3 years time, they'll have had crucial experience. And for the guys that in the end decide not to continue their entrepreneurial journey, well, you know what? They've actually made themselves very employable. And it's for that reason that we work with companies like Ubisoft, TT Games, EA, and we've started the UK's first AAA scholarship program last year. So EA Sports, I should say, in partnership with the Wrexham Football Club, they pay our student fees to progress in that sense. So it's become a hugely popular phenomenon. Yeah.
So, Richard, I know what lots of people are thinking. They're thinking, this sounds fantastic, and how do I get onto this program? So, is the program open for applications? Is it something that people from across Wales can do, not just Wrexham? How do people get involved?
Yeah, so Games Heart Wales is a pan-Wales initiative. So long as you're based in Wales and you're looking to start a studio in Wales, you are eligible to apply. And if you have a studio that already exists, you are also eligible to apply. Applications for this year have now closed, but the next window of opportunity is probably going to be around May time next year. And the program typically runs from sort of August through until spring. So, for example, we've already onboarded 8 studios for this year. We will fund, in fact, up to 16 studios per year, and we currently have an active portfolio of around 22 companies, all of which are active and working on content. And we're going to be taking probably 16 of those studios to GDC in the spring. So it's big things on the horizon.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So there you go. There you have it, right? May. Keep an eye out for when those applications open. And if you can't wait that long, there is another initiative that you could do in preparation. So at iungo Solutions, we run the Games Developer Foundry Wales, which is a program that's funded by Creative Wales, and similar but more early stage than where you are, Richard. We are looking at people who literally just have a concept. So they want to take that first step to designing and publishing a game. And what we can offer, again, is very similar, but it's just targeted at those more early stage businesses. Maybe you don't even have a business yet. So if you need a little bit of incubation support first, give us a shout. I'm sure they'll share our contact details, and keep an eye out for those applications to Games Talent Wales in May 2024. Thank you, Richard. So Jake, I want to come on to you now, because you have fairly recently founded a business in VR. You're not so much in the entertainment industry, though. Tell us a little bit about what made you set up a business and what it's all about.
Yeah, cool. So, guys, I'm Jake. I'm one of the founders of ClearPixel VR. We are essentially using virtual reality to train people in biomedical and pharmaceutical studies. So we work with universities and research organizations and big pharma to basically upskill people on equipment. I did study game development in university, and VR, funny enough, was something that I never wanted to touch again. But it's become more and more popular. It's become more and more accessible. You know, headsets are getting better. The industry's growing. more and more VR companies are moving into more serious spaces. So I'd say in terms of the panel, I'm probably in an area that's a little more serious when it comes to the application of games rather than entertainment. But yeah, I would say, starting a company is something that I kind of advocate for in terms of pushing students to consider it more seriously. And I went to the University of South Wales. I don't know who's attending here, but they have a great business incubator that helped us. And looking for those opportunities to kind of start your company and work with accelerators and business incubators, I think is a huge part of trying to grow a company. And we've found ourselves in this unique kind of space. And I think even just looking at the messaging in terms of what VR and AR are trying to do, at the minute you see Meta pushing more and more for training solutions and how there are applications in engineering and biomedical science, aerospace engineering as well. There's huge companies out there that are applying essentially game development to improving their training, and I think it's relevant in a lot of industries right now.
Fantastic. So I suppose the question a lot of people will be asking is, games development sounds like a really dynamic, fast-moving space, and immersive technologies generally, particularly when we're looking at these more scientific sectors, it looks like there's lots of opportunity, but it seems like you might have to set up a business. So how easy is that? You mentioned, I suppose it's Startup Studio that you were part of, that accelerator program, but how easy is it to, I don't know, raise investment? Do you need investment? Is this the sort of thing you can do with no financial means to start with? How do people get going with that?
I'd say there's a few options. So we did an investment round this year. It was a lot of planning. So I would say if you're going to do it straight out of university like we did, it takes a lot of time. You do have to get a lot of backing and a lot of validation in what you're trying to do. I think looking for critical pain points, for us, it was all about how can we use VR in areas that require a lot of help when it comes to training and whether there's not, I guess, as much innovation in the training system. So in education, there was a problem whereby people couldn't get on the equipment that they were going to train on in their professional industry. So we kind of stepped in and said, we can help you get more exposed to these environments and these workplaces. So we had to prove the point for a long time. Setting up the business was quite quick, but then it's like, getting the traction, getting the sort of customer support, the validation. So in terms of the journey that we went on, started the company in 2020 as a bit of a pet project. We built a desktop simulator for specifically for like biomedical labs, so training in a few areas. And we started to test it. We did our incubator time at USW. We then moved through an accelerator called Ideas to Innovation, where we got some grant funding. Grants, I'll touch on that in a minute. But we basically kind of said, the area that we're trying to push into is so stagnant in terms of its training. A desktop app won't necessarily impact much. So then we were like, maybe we could do this in VR. And we quickly, pushed that from a desktop to a VR platform. And we took it to a big event. And then we basically showed a bunch of scientists and they were like, oh, wow, like this is so cool. We've never seen anything like this before. And that was what we needed, basically, to go to funds and investors and say, there's a problem here and we can kind of step in and solve that. So it takes a lot of time. If you can find those pain points and apply something practically to it, then I would say it speeds things up. And then on the grant side of things, I'd say there's lots and lots of pots of money out there. We do work a lot with the Welsh Gov alongside some of the guys, and there's organisations like Creative Wales who do a lot of funding if they've got projects in certain areas. So there's a lot of pots out there. You kind of have to really dig in and look. You've got to be proactive.
Fantastic. And for anybody who is interested and does already have a concept, I believe that the Creative Wales Production Fund is currently open for applications. I'm not sure for how much longer, but do check that out on their website. But Jake, it really sounds like that product validation was a really important part of your journey. So David, I'd like to come to you now to really sort of talk about the wider applications and the wider careers within immersive technologies and some of the really amazing work that you're doing at the Wales Millennium Centre. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm David Massey. I'm senior producer and programmer for an immersive venue that we run in the Wales Millennium Centre. Apparently, it's the first of its kind in the UK with a rolling program that's kind of dedicated to XR technologies. So I assume that everybody knows XR as the umbrella term for VR, mixed reality, and augmented reality. And I think it came out of some discussions I was having with a lot of creative producers who were showing their work internationally at the film festival circuit. And it was kind of preaching to the converted. And a lot of the producers and filmmakers and creative studios were saying, we need a space where we can actually start showing this work to anyone that walks through the doors. And that's where it came out of, really, after talking to my artistic director about it. So really, it was a bit of an experiment, which is now doing quite well. So we've had, since we opened last year, we've had around 20,000 visitors to the space, which is fantastic. And we've shown around 15 different projects, ranging from a VR rave experience to a rainforest, a beautiful rainforest documentary talking about the importance of climate change. So obviously that's one arm of our work, very much kind of programming arm, but also we are really, because we're still relatively new, we want to look at ways that we can start supporting young artists or emerging creators wanting to work in this realm, especially around production, because we're a theatre, an art space, right, and a theatre production space, so we should be supporting creators at all levels. And I think that's what's really exciting about the kind of future of how all of this work's going to collide in terms of gaming, interaction, documentary, immersive art as well. And so, you know, I think there is going to be lots of opportunity moving forward in terms of supporting this kind of work. And I do know in terms of, you know, especially within Europe, there's a lot of residencies that happen, XR labs, and I'm starting to see it a lot more now within theatre companies. There's a theatre company I was just talking to last week who up in Scotland are running their own XR lab, creative XR lab, which would give creators and storytellers the opportunity to explore how emerging technologies can start supporting more theatrical pieces of work that we could show on a kind of larger scale. So really kind of exciting time. And then outside of that, I suppose in terms of in other future funds as well, there's a fund that's about to come out in February next year. They're going through the process of looking for a consortia at the moment. It's going to be called X-Artists, not something that rolls off the tongue that easily, but that's all of the arts councils have kind of come together across the UK to work with UKRI to help artists wanting to create new XR work at kind of a grassroots level, because the community is lovely that's kind of supporting this kind of niche area of work. But it's in terms of, I think, we want to look at ways that we can start giving people the tools at a really basic level so they can start making their own stuff. And then obviously we would help kind of present it and showcase it and develop it as well. So I hope that that gives you a bit quick overview of what we do.
No, that's really great. Thanks, David. And for those of you who haven't been to the Wales Millennium Centre in the last probably 12 months, you should really get down there. It's a really exciting space. They've really transformed it. Great co-working spaces. You can see the immersive box initiative. Seriously, get down there. So I think what we've learned from this discussion so far is that we really are on this cusp of, I suppose it's a fusion between technology and creativity that's unlocking all of these different opportunities in lots of sectors, actually. And it's not just about entrepreneurship. I think we've obviously got a very successful and entrepreneurial panel, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of jobs in your growing companies as well. Are you recruiting?
Yeah, so in fact, we just hired programmer, finance director. So I mean, people are always surprised that. So I'm not a programmer, so everybody thinks that to be in the games industry, you need to be a programmer. So we have a team of programmers, and they are very important. And even in programming, that can be a specialized. You could be an AI specialist, you know, you could be a UI specialist. It depends. But the reality of it is, whatever your skill is, it is transferable to video games development, even if you're, like I said, a financial expert, that's needed. So you really look at, as you know, if you have a passion for video games, you look at what your skill is and where it would fit in the games industry. So like I said, from indie companies to massive companies, there's so many different types of job in the games industry, you know. So like I said, it's a double-edged sword, the games industry is. So there's lots of people hiring, but there's been a lot of redundancies this year as well, for the negative. Also, it's very competitive, but because of the nature of the business of it, especially the entertainment business, it means new platforms create new opportunities, but equally then things can get a little bit, I suppose, saturated. But it sort of always reinvents itself and moves again and creates new opportunities for new skills as well.
Fantastic. So let's open the floor to some questions. I'm sure you've all been having lots of burning questions that you'd like to ask.
We've got my colleague over there, Lottie's got a microphone, so we can come around and ask your questions. And if you're watching online as well, there is an option to put a question in the message bar. So even if you're online, you can still put some questions. So has anyone got any questions for our panel? Don't be shy. Yes, lady at the front. Hang on a second, microphone coming round.
Success well is engaging with local train.
Oh, sorry about that. Nice. Okay, shout it and then I'll... So the lady was asking what Jessica's business is, how she got into it.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, so I suppose my background, I'm actually an engineer. I did my degree in astrophysics. I trained as an electrician before that. So I worked in the manufacturing sector for a number of years. I worked for Sony. I had an international role working between the UK and Japan. And I think what we really learned is that we struggle to find the right talent. So although my role was to manage software developers and engineers, I couldn't find enough of them. If I found them, I couldn't keep them. And if I could keep them, they didn't have the right skills. So we developed an initiative at Sony that was all about upskilling people for some of these future roles. So we were doing things like, virtual factory, predictive analytics. We were doing stuff with robotics, and we needed some really kind of niche skills. So in the pandemic, I had, I suppose, a little bit of a midlife crisis, looked at my situation, thought I need to do something else. I need to have more of a purpose in life. So I left Sony along with somebody else who I worked with, and we set up iungo. So what we do, and you're absolutely right, I should have introduced this at the start. We are all about filling those emergent skills gaps. So we work across a number of sectors. One of them is digital creative and games development. And I suppose the key thing that we offer in the context of gaming is the Games Developer Foundry Wales. So this is a program where you can come in with zero experience of games, zero experience of programming or technology, and we will take you from the ground up. It's a 9-month program. People come onto it at different stages depending on their experience and their backgrounds, but you can come into it from the beginning. And the final stage of that program is to really help you either find a job in the game sector or an adjacent sector like David has talked about, or to set up your own business. So yeah, that's what I do. I got my MBE, because you asked, by the way, I wouldn't normally say, but I got my MBE for services to women in engineering. So my role is really about encouraging women to get into some of these less well-known or more male-dominated industries. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, another question. Yeah, gentleman at the front, we're going to bring another microphone. Start that again. We're going to bring another microphone round for you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael. I've recently completed a bootcamp with her company, iungo Solutions. It was really good. It was a 3-4 week program. And, before the program, I didn't really know too much about data. But, when I was done, I had a very thorough knowledge, even though I still had to do some self-learning as well. But my question's for him. The
Jake?
graduate who started his own company. So you talked about problem solving, trying to find a problem to solve, and then, being able to find a solution. What kind of tips, or how would you suggest an approach to someone who's trying to figure out what problem to solve? Because like there's tons of problems out there. So, you know, how do you narrow it down? How do you like figure it out? Like, what do I want to solve exactly? And maybe it doesn't have to be just you. It could be like you and a group of people. Like, how were you guys able to, you know, work together and figure it out?
Yeah, so I would say I got a little bit of a handle on the particular problem that we were trying to solve by. So my dad, funnily enough, is a scientist, and he's been an academic and a researcher, and he would often come home and be like, kids these days don't know how to do their practical studies, and I was like, well, isn't that your job to kind of like figure that out? And he was being like, well, it's difficult because there's so little access to equipment. And that conversation was like niggling for a while, being like, you know, can we do something there? Can we figure something out in terms of, it was actually during COVID. So my friend and I had a lot of free time, and we were saying, you know, maybe we could build you a virtual lab and you could start testing it with the kids and see how they respond. But I say that's specific to us. I've had so many other friends in the startup sort of area who have talked about lots of problems. I think you got to, in my opinion, I think you just got to keep asking questions and you'll find something. I know that's such a vague thing to say, but like, for example, my friend the other day, he started talking about some hotel idea, and he was saying, oh yeah, my friend's got this idea to, I don't know, loan out hotel rooms that are not being used, etc. There's little conversations like that. I think getting involved in like a startup community or a startup network, if you can get into, there's areas in Cardiff like the Tramshed community, Tramshed Tech, being in environments where there's sort of like-minded people and they're all trying to solve problems, that's a great way to get started on solving your own problem. I'd be interested to talk to you more if you like after this, if you want. But I think finding something that normally costs a lot of money and having something that can reduce that cost is normally the number one thing to go for. So yeah, I think if you like, we can have a chat about this afterwards. I feel like I'm giving a lot of vague answers here. But yeah, we'll talk afterwards if you like.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for the questions. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. But as Jake says, the guys will be around for a little bit afterwards. So if you do have a burning question to speak to them about, please do that. And I think the real take home from this session has been how varied gaming is, all the different opportunities within it, the different skills that different people bring to it. So, you know, if you've got any interest at all, it sounds like there's definitely an opportunity for you out there. So a big thank you to the panel. Our next session here on this stage is at 10:30. The title is Beyond Reality, and it's Navigating the Future of Virtual Worlds. So if you've been interested in this, you should be interested in that as well. Hope to see some of you then. But if not, please, can I just put your hands together for our panel of Richard, Di, David, Jake, and Jessica. Thank you all very much.
Two, 1, 2.